backwards, yeah. Immature lover who don't use big words, yeah. I don't need convincing at all because I know what I want. Baby, can't you figure it out? What's going on in your heart? What's it gonna take for you to love, take for you to love me? What's it gonna take for you to show, take for you to show?
My plan for today is to work on the drawing of the double-crested cormorant. This is one of the compositional drawings for the bird book that I'm working on, and I have a whole segment updating you on how that project is going. The cormorant, like several of the species that are depicted in the book, is kind of from an odd angle, but it really shows the bird's breeding plumage really well, and it's an unusual pose, and I really like trying to create drawings with more unusual poses. So sometimes those take a little bit longer. The one I was working on yesterday was cinnamon teal, and the bird was stretching its wing out alongside its body. It's one of the things that I really enjoy seeing birds do, is how they stretch their wings, and they often stretch a leg at the same time, and that's what this bird's doing, is it's actually floating on the surface of the water. So I had all sorts of things to contend with, and I'm still wrestling with the proportions on that bird. There's something about the length of the body that doesn't look quite right to me. And yeah, so I may go back and work on that one a little bit more. But nonetheless, the plan today is to work on double-crested cormorant. And before I got started on that, I thought, are my bracelets rattling too much? Before I got started on that, I thought I would just give you a little bit of update on how other things are going for me right now. I am in the middle of battling my usual bout of winter depression. I tend to get depressed during the winter. I know some of it is seasonal, that we have these short, dark winter days here in Oregon. And as we go through many, many days without sun, it starts to really affect my mood. I do use a light box, so if you're thinking, oh, you should try a light box, I use a light box, very bright light box. So I do light therapy every morning, and am doing some other things, not taking medication right now because I don't really think that I'm ready for medication. And also the medication gives me insomnia, and insomnia is one of my problems anyway, so don't really want to go down that road. But I'm trying to do all the right things. Part of the difficulty with depression is not just the feeling sad or the loss of energy, but I also tend to go to places where I start having unwanted thoughts, and those unwanted thoughts are often either about regrets, or they're very self-hatred is probably a little bit strong a word, but it probably isn't too far from the truth. I certainly start to feel very sorry for myself. And as things are not going super well on some areas of my art business right now, it's easier for me to feel sorry for myself. For example, last time I did a video for you, which aired a couple of weeks ago, I talked a lot about my Patreon and have gotten no new patrons and have lost a couple of patrons. And so it's very easy for me to start going to a bad place and either blaming myself or going to one of my self-defeating thoughts, like I'm working so hard but I'm not getting anywhere, or why am I trying, or one of those things. And so I'm working very hard to try to counter those negative thoughts with more positive things. And one of the things that I'm working on, and one of the ways I'm doing that, is really thinking about each day, what am I looking forward to? And very specifically calling to mind something that I'm looking forward to experiencing or doing. For example, I'm doing a lot of puppy training with Bench right now, and it's really fun because I get to see him learn new tricks. And so we have these fun, positive interactions. So that's something I look forward to every day. I look forward to drawing and working on this book project every day, even when drawings sometimes don't go quite as well as I would hope they would. So those are a couple of the ways that I am trying to battle these negative feelings and these thoughts of discouragement when things don't go quite the way I want them to. So I'm going to get started on this drawing. Editing Tara here. I was editing the tutorial for Lumafusion and realized that I didn't record any kind of intro. So let me tell you very briefly what this is about. As you probably remember, if you've watched my vlogs before, I do all of my editing of my vlogs using my iPad, using Lumafusion. And in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I make reels using Lumafusion. Now on to the tutorial. I begin by creating a new project and then change the aspect ratio. Next, I go over to sources and choose photos and pull up all of the video clips that I want to add and drop those all in, one right after the next. Then I go to downloads and choose the music file that I want to use and drop that into the secondary timeline. Then I open the first clip by double tapping on it and go to Color and Effects on the far right at the bottom, and then tap Original and adjust the levels, the brightness, the contrast, and the vibrance. Then I go up to the Attributes clipboard and choose Copy, and then one by one I select all the other clips. And using the clipboard down at the bottom, I paste those color correction attributes onto each clip. Now I want to go to work on getting the music and the action to sync up the way I want them to. And I listen to the first part of the clip and hear that there's just a little bit of dead space, and then there's this nice drum intro. And I'd like that drum intro to start off the clip without that little bit of dead space. Now I go to the very end of the video clips and cut off the song there at the end. So here is the completed reel. Also created a cover for it in Procreate and uploaded it to Instagram with a caption. And that's it. So I thought I'd pop back on and show you how this drawing of the cormorant has turned out. So this is the source image from Wikimedia Commons. You can see the crest on top of the head. We're kind of looking down on the bird. It's got its foot raised, so it's probably displaying to a potential mate. And here is the drawing. So you can see there's the feet and shadows, and I've roughed in the wings enough to help us to know what it is we're looking at. So that's what I'll present to the author, and if he likes it, then that is good. So I'd say that's a pretty good morning's work. I feel really good about that and ready to move on to the next species. I think that's evening grosbeak maybe, or is it dusky grouse? I think dusky grouse is the next one on the list, but I may do evening grosbeak first, just to have a little simpler illustration before I go into another illustration that has lots of feather details, just to give myself a little bit of a break. So that's where we are so far today. wanted to give you an update on my book project. As you may recall, I am under contract to illustrate a book on Oregon birds. And the last time I talked about this, I was really struggling through the preliminary sketches. So there are 41 bird species and 15 habitats to illustrate. I am working on the birds first. And the idea was that I was doing preliminary sketches from various photo reference of each species, 3 to 5 poses for each species. And then those would be submitted to the author. The author would then choose which pose for each species that he likes best. And then I come back and do a compositional sketch for each one of those, which is a more detailed drawing that is more correct to proportion and all the details that would go into the final illustration. I am happy to tell you that I finally finished all of the preliminary sketches just before Christmas, and I was very, very relieved to get through those. I really overthought a lot of it. I got very tight. I got really precious about it. It was just kind of contributed to some artistic insecurity, and the good news is that it also contributed to some growth. I do sketching of birds every day as a daily practice. I do it practically first thing in the morning, have my coffee, then sit down and do just some simple little sketches in my sketchbook. And that practice is what really has paid off for me because it kept me going. It kept me in touch with being loose at a time when I felt quite tight and started to get really in my head. The other thing that kind of complicated matters for me is as I was going into the Christmas holiday and finishing this large phase of the project, I also started experiencing a lot of insomnia. I go through seasonal affective disorder almost every winter where I go through some form of depression. It usually is at its worst in January, so this is about the time of year when things start to get really bad for me. But I started early. And I was having some insomnia, so with the sleep deprivation, with the feelings of sadness, self-pity, discouragement, unwanted negative thoughts about myself, I was really in a bad mental state right at the time when I was finishing the preliminary sketches. So as Christmas rolled around, I allowed myself to take a couple of weeks off. And so that's why I wasn't vlogging either, was I really had to have some real focused time of rest and getting back to the normal me, or as close to the normal me as I could get to. So returning from the Christmas holidays, I sat down with the author, got his approval on which poses to move forward with, and now I am working on the compositional sketches. And so I have started with working my way through thumbnailing, deciding how complex each illustration might be, whether it's just a simple illustration of the bird on a perch or flying with no background, or the bird pictured in habitat with things around it, perhaps other members of its own species, or in some cases, members of other species, if that's appropriate for the habitat. So I am now working on all of those compositional sketches. And I'm able to do, on good days, 3 or 4 species a day. And on days when things don't go quite so well, like yesterday, I completed 1 compositional sketch, started another one, it went horribly wrong, and I scrapped it and we'll start it over today. So I am now working my way through these 41 species for these compositional sketches. Once the author approves those, and I expect there'll be some adjustments and revisions to some of these sketches, then I'll start painting. The other thing I'm working on right now is color palette. I am intending to work with a restricted color palette, and so as my starting point, I am choosing the Rebecca Green. I'm putting it in air quotes, the Rebecca Green acrylic gouache Holbein palette. If you're familiar with illustrator Rebecca Green, she actually does children's books for the most part, but she is wonderful about sharing her process around color. And since I was feeling a little up in the air about it, I decided that starting with the palette that she put together for a special edition of a whole bean set would be a good place for me to start. So I have now got all those paints in order and am now starting to do some color mixing and moving toward my first studies, because I think that the studies will help me then finalize which colors are in the palette. So that's where I am on the book project for now, and hopefully we'll have more progress to share with you next time. Look, the sun is out. The sun. What is that bright light in the sky? Oh my goodness. The sun came out. So today is Thursday. We're supposed to have kind of a nice weekend. Douglas said it's supposed to be kind of warm. And even like down at Brookings, Oregon, which is kind of in the southern coast of the state, it's supposed to get up into the 60s. And I told him we should drive down there where it's warm and sunny. So maybe we will, and that would be really good. That would really help me a lot, I think, to get some sunshine. It is ridiculously crazy how dependent on light I seem to be, that just I need that light for serotonin production so bad. Don't remember if I said this in the intro or if I said it in a previous video. I choose a word for every year, and I have been choosing a theme for the year for a couple of years now. And this year's theme is tending the star inside my heart. So I think I have mentioned that I have this affirmation that I use. It says, I tend the star inside my heart so it shines beautiful, brilliant, and bright. And one of the things that I realized a couple of days ago, I think I was making up the bed. I do some of my best thinking when I'm making up the bed. I was making up the bed and I was thinking about my affirmation, and I was thinking about the state of mind that I was in. And I realized that the state of mind, especially wallowing in self-pity, and I was journaling that morning particularly, and kind of journaling on all the things that seem to be going wrong, or at least not going the way I want them to. And I thought, that is really putting a lot of negative pressure on the star inside my heart. It's making it harder for the star inside my heart to shine brilliant, beautiful, and bright. It's like I'm making the window to my heart dirty and dark, and I'm not giving the star good, healthy fuel to work with that would help it to shine more brightly. So I have worked much harder this week to really pay attention to some positive things, to think about gratitude. Gratitude is always very good for me. Just calling up thoughts of gratitude, that when I find myself going off on those negative thoughts, or those thoughts that are more, I keep thinking of words like self-loathing and self-hating, but it's thoughts where I'm turning negative criticism onto myself. And I can be very, very self-critical. And when I'm in this state of mind, I'm more self-critical. So when I catch myself doing that, to remind myself, okay, I need to let up on myself. I need to be easier on the star inside my heart. I try to call to mind something I'm grateful for, or I remind myself of something I'm looking forward to. And so as I've done that through this week, that's really helped me quite a lot. And now with the sun coming out, I feel a lot better than I did earlier. I was going to tell you about some other video that you can watch, and I can't think of one right off the top of my head, but I'm sure in editing something will come to me. So here's another video for you to take a look at, and I'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching. Bye now.